The scene in which the ship was being threatened by some outside problem, some outside dangerous force, and there was a lot of activity on the ship. The captain is saying, do such and such, press this button, do this, warp 3, get us out of here, and so forth. Other people are reacting and scurrying around. And I think I'm remembering correctly that Spock had one word to say, and the word was fascinating. And we're looking at this thing on the screen, and everybody else is reacting, oh, look at it, blah, 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 blah. And I got caught up in that energy, and I said, fascinating. And the director said, give me a brilliant note, and said, be different, be the scientist, be detached. See it as something that's a curiosity rather than a threat. Thank you. I said, fascinating. Well, a big chunk of the character was born right there.
Nerderotic.com.
CBS All Ass has decided to dump a Star Trek on us, so let's review it. What's a Star Trek? It's a 25% episode of 100% Not Star Trek, featuring a 25% different Mr. Spock wearing a 25% smile on his face and a 25% different Delta insignia on his 25% different Starfleet uniform. Mr. Spock beams aboard the 25% different Enterprise, where he encounters the 25% different Number 1, played by Rebecca Romijn, and someday I hope it's Rebecca Romijn Stamos again. I'm really rooting for you kids. And in 14 short minutes, they managed to make the one bright spot from Star Trek Discovery Season 2 100% annoying. But before I get started, if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. The recent changes here on YouTube greatly benefit corporations like CBS, but they do not benefit independent channels like myself and your favorite YouTuber. If you could continue to do this, I would appreciate it and they would appreciate it. Now on to the Star Trek. We see immediately that Star Trek has continued its tradition of being the worst written show on television. Now, Rebecca Romijn, and someday Rebecca Romijn Stamos' Number 1 was one of the bright spots from Star Trek Discovery Season 2. She wasn't in it very much, but she certainly felt like a Star Trek character as much as Anson Mount's Captain Pike did. And of course, everybody wants that show, but that's not the show they're giving us, and quite frankly, that's probably a good thing as long as Alex Kurtzman is somewhat in charge, or his name is on it in any way, shape, or form, and they continue to use the template from Jar Jar Abrams. Mr. Spock would be on the Mount Rushmore of pop culture, and Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek continues to destroy this character by trying to squeeze the blood out of the turnip that is the cage, making him shout at the beginning of the episode, having him smirking, smiling, and yes, singing. Star Trek Discovery is an inherently sexist show. Yes, it is, because of the constant breaking down of male characters to build up female characters. It's not sexist towards the males, it's sexist towards the females, because the writers of this show must feel like women don't stand on equal ground to men, so they obviously have to break them down every chance they get, or they're just petty and they have some issues that they need to work out. But they're destroying our favorite franchise and one of the most popular characters in pop culture, like I said before, in Mr. Spock, by constantly having to make him smile and getting all of his motivation from women. That's the other current trend. Besides breaking down men, all of the inspiration has to come from a strong woman. So Rebecca Romijn, in the first 5 minutes of this episode, tells Spock that he has to ask a lot of questions. So therefore, that's why Spock asks a lot of questions, is because of this one little scene with Number 1. And of course, in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, he had to reach out to the person furthest from him, who was Kirk. Now, how did we figure this out? Well, I just thought that was the only way they could go, because they had to make Michael Burnham the inspiration for everything. Now it is done through Rebecca Romijn. And again, she was one of the brighter spots from Star Trek Discovery Season 2, but now they've made her completely annoying. And the other annoying thing is they're continuing to try to be the Orville. You're not funny. You're not talented enough to write drama. If you're not talented enough to write drama, you should not even get near comedy. I know you're feeling the competition from Seth MacFarlane, and you should, because he has produced better Star Trek than you, Alex Kurtzman, and you, Pulitzer Prize-winning Michael Chabon, who unfortunately wrote this episode. So I guess I'm going to dash the hopes of Star Trek Picard fans out there, especially on the heels of a pretty decent trailer. This episode exemplifies everything wrong with Kurtzman's Star Trek. Quantum stochastic. Somebody did some Googling before they wrote this episode, and then they used it 3 times within 5 minutes of dialogue in a 14-minute episode, and that's where this show falls apart every single time. They try to shove 50 ideas in, again, 14 minutes of television. Let me give you some unsolicited advice, Michael Chabon and Alex Kurtzman. Come up with one good idea. One singular good science fiction idea and try to wrap the show around that. Baby steps. I know we're 3 to 4 years into Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek and he's trying to reinvent the wheel with a pair of scissors, but maybe there's still time. Maybe you can change. Hashtag be better, Alex Kurtzman. But let's talk about the verisimilitude of this episode. We have 2 characters trapped in an elevator in a starship with a transporter. This elevator, which turns out is a giant roller coaster, that fits somehow in this 25% different Enterprise. I'm guessing that's where they put the 1,500 shuttles that they used in the battle towards the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. After they're stuck in this elevator, the engineer can't figure it out. It might be the brakes. But again, nobody brings up the transporter. The same transporter that could have saved Admiral Cornhole from her needless sacrificial death at the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. Somebody on that ship needs to be fired. Oh, maybe the writers need to be fired. Now, they show off some more techno-babble. Instead of having a deep conversation where we could have seen them connect as friends in some way, but instead, it looks like they're about to make out. So, Spock asks some more questions, then number 1 gets annoyed, and then I get annoyed because she's completely annoying this entire episode, and that's really hard to do, by the way. Rebecca Romijn is a very charming person and a very charming actor. The female engineer pipes in and tells them it's going to be a while, so their big solution is to send another woman who is a great scientist and also happens to be an expert rock climber, and she's going to rappel down and save them from the elevator in the ship with a transporter. In the meantime, number 1 tries to fix it herself, she shocks herself, and then she starts singing Pirates of Penzance. I'm not kidding. She starts singing Pirates of Penzance, and Spock finishes it. Yes, Spock finishes the song. So, in a 14-minute episode, we get smirking Spock, smiling Spock, envious Spock, because there's a moment where he says he is envious that number 1 went somewhere in deep space, and we have singing Pirates of Penzance Spock with a big shit-eating grin at the end of the song. This is what is wrong with Star Trek. These people don't understand Spock. They don't understand Star Trek. They don't know what they're doing. So after the musical routine with Mr. Spock and number 1, they are saved by the super science woman who is a rock climber, and she lifts Rebecca Romijn's number 1 out of the elevator with one hand, and it looks like she's about 1,000 feet above any surface within the 25% different Enterprise. They end up on the 25% different bridge where they see Captain Pike. Captain Pike asks Mr. Spock if he ever feels awe, and he looks at number 1 and says, "We do, but we keep it to ourselves." And we find out that the whole episode was about Spock being in awe of number 1, because in current year Hollywood, we can't have a white male lead unless there is a strong woman or women behind him. So he was in awe of his sister Michael Burnham, who he has never mentioned before, and he is now in awe of Rebecca Romijn, Stamos' number 1, and it looks like Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek under Alex Kurtzman is just more of the same. So don't be fooled by that Star Trek Picard trailer, because it's still an Alex Kurtzman joint. And it just makes me think of what Red Letter Media said in their Star Trek Discovery Season 2 review. It seems like science fiction and genre has been taken over by the jocks, and I could not agree with them more. And it's not really fair, because I watched the premiere episode of The Expanse today, New Terra, the opening episode for Season 4, and it was spectacular, and it just showed how far Star Trek has fallen. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, well, thanks for listening this long. I'll see you in the next video.
Nerderotic.com